C-form and also to provide us some insight on the career opportunities for medical physics in Southeast Asia. So without further ado, we're going to move to the third session today, entitled Innovation in Medical Physics, Shaping the Future of Healthcare. Our next speaker is Prof. E.A. Bradley, former president of the International Radiation Physics Society, where he will address the exciting innovation within medical physics that are reshaping the healthcare. Prof. Bradley will also discuss groundbreaking technologies and research achievements, exploring how they contribute to more precise diagnostic and effective treatment. Please welcome Prof. Bradley.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm trying to share at the moment, but I'm not allowed. So if you can please help me to share. I don't see an access to sharing.
Access to share? You have access to share.
I press the share button and it asks me click share to share content in the meeting.
Can you press?
Yes.
And then it asks me optimize for text and images, and I've ticked that, and then I press share and nothing.
Nothing?
Select a tab to share, nothing. My system, I've opened the thing that I wish to share, and it says we can't display your shared content. Make sure that you have been allowed permission to share content, and then try again.
All right.
So you need to give me permission to share.
Can you try again?
So no, it is trying to share my email. But I will close that. I'll close my email. So let me try again. Share. Share. No. So it is not allowing me to share. I can close I guess I should close what it is that I'm trying to share and then reopen it. That's one way of doing it. Yeah. So I will close it and then reopen it. So I've just reopened it. Bear with me, audience. So now I'll press the share again. Optimize for what do you want to share? Optimize for text and images. It's ticked.
We also going to download the slide from the link. Maybe bear with us. In 1 minute.
So I'm not allowed to share. Open system preferences. To share your screen, allow screen recording for Chrome in system preferences. Then you'll need to restart Chrome.
Oh, it's okay. We're just going to open up your slide, download from email.
Okay. Am I waiting for you or you're waiting for me?
We are trying to open up your PPT from here, from the computers here.
Apologies to the audience for this.
We try to get them like
No, I'm still not given permission. We can't display your shared content. Make sure that you've been allowed permission to share content.
sorry, Prof. Yes, sorry for you.
You can give me a host key, reclaim host key, then I can share it, I think.
All right, Prof. We successfully download your slide and we're going to share.
Okay, but of course you will have to drive this for me, not.
Yes, no
Right.
problem.
Okay.
Missed. Sorry.
But I also don't have a pointer now. I guess. Can you see my pointer? Yeah, thank you. But can you see my pointer as I move it around the screen? No, obviously not.
No.
No. Okay. So am I ready to? Maybe you should give me full screen.
Yes.
This is only partial screen at the moment, I think. Is this full screen?
Yes, Prof. It's full screen.
Okay. So thank you everybody for your patience. Thank you for the organizers for asking me to give this talk on innovations in medical physics shaping the future of healthcare. It's a big topic, so I hope you'll bear with me as I begin to explore some of these situations. I guess I should start at the beginning by saying that my first position as a medical physicist was in 1976 in Charing Cross Hospital. And I've now completed 47 years in this profession. So let's move on then to my first slide, if you will. Whoever's driving my slide for me.
Okay.
Is there somebody helping me to drive? I have no control now. Okay, so okay, thank you. So the things I want to talk about is about wealth and health are intertwined. You can see in hospitals throughout Malaysia right now and elsewhere that radiological facilities are amongst the most capital intensive of the facilities that you will find in any hospital. So the development of medical physics has depended largely upon the ability for a country to acquire the specialist technology that is available to it. So, and much of this depends upon us controlling the elements from hydrogen through to uranium, but we'll talk about it. I also want to talk about strengthening your foundations in not only in medical physics, but in areas that surround it. And then I want to talk about keeping up to date with the latest information, which is also a very large task. And then also I want to talk about making your mark, your own mark in this area of innovation in medical physics. And that's a very daunting prospect, because then the next question is, you want to innovate with respect to what? And to innovate with respect to what means that there's a very great need for you to be widely read in order to perhaps understand some of the opportunities that are available to you. I also want to stress that in this idea of innovating in medical physics, you need to maintain a questioning approach to everything, not just to accept blindly facts. Because it's through this questioning approach that new ideas can be evolved as you begin to probe the area of medical physics, that there are many things that remain. I think you're jumping ahead. Sorry. You jumped ahead by one slide. I haven't finished the previous. Okay. So then the next question is that about what is there available to innovate in, and what we know is that there is a whole encyclopedia of ignorance. If you probe the area of any knowledge sufficiently, you'll find that we actually don't know the answer to many questions. And in doing that, there's this real importance of collaboration. I think this is something that you will see as we walk through my slides. If we go to the next one, of course, both Chai Hong and Nora have looked at these posters that are produced on International Days of Medical Physics. We can go forward by one slide, and we can look at the slide for the poster for 2023. And so you'll see that on 2023, and this anniversary date of November the 7th for Madame Curie's birth, that we go first of all to Röntgen, actually, who was born in, whose discovery of the X-ray was actually on the 8th of November, but in 1895, one day after Madame Curie's birthday. But actually, although we say that Röntgen discovered the X-ray, Tesla was working on this at the same time. And actually now, if you Google Tesla, all you'll see is a very large collection of motor cars and no photograph at all of Tesla. So this MRI now it will be recognized by the field intensity 0.5 Tesla, 1 Tesla, and so on. So don't forget about Tesla and his contributions, not only to X-rays, but also through to magnetism and MRI. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there's this picture of Madame Röntgen's hand. And I wanted to just say that we'll come back to that in a short while. But this picture on the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, which purportedly is of Röntgen, is not at all of Röntgen, but we'll come to that in a short while. And then you walk through this from 1903 and Madame Curie and her husband looking at radioactivity. But before that, there was Becquerel, who discovered radioactivity in the 1st of March of 1896. So we've gone from 1895, the discovery of X-rays, to the 1st of March of 1896 of the radioactivity, and then in 1897, J.J. Thomson discovering X-rays, electrons. So 3 great years of discovery. And then you'll see Rosalind Franklin on the middle left-hand corner, left-hand side, 50, discovering the genetic form of our bodies, the DNA, and cheated of the Nobel Prize, by the way, and falling out with her supervisor at the same time, so they never enjoyed a particular good relationship after that. And then in 1952, you've got you've got Hounsfield creating the CT machine, and it was taking minutes to make a scan of a head, and now you can do sub-second CT imaging. And then in 1972, you have, if I can read this slide properly, we have Latoubrau and and co-workers working on MRI. So we'll go to the next slide. So then on the next PowerPoint, which we see the winning entry on the left-hand side, and you see this inspiring the next generation, and a host of photographs here. And when I tried to understand who these people were, on the left-hand side, you can see Becquerel at the top. You can see the two Curies in the bottom left-hand side. Then you can see on the top, you can see Chadwick, who discovered the neutron. You can see on the right-hand side, we can see in the middle Rutherford, and on the right-hand side, you can see J.J. Thomson. So we've got radioactivity on the left-hand side. We've got the discovery of the components of the nucleus at the top middle there, with Chadwick just below the symbol for the radioactivity. And he discovered the neutron in 1932. And then on the right-hand side, you can see Niels Bohr, you can see Einstein, and you can see Röntgen, and they were all investigating fundamental aspects of the atom. So this leaves us with these two pictures up on the top left-hand side there, with this man who looks very oriental, but he's not, and then someone below him. And in order for us to do this, together with Ali Tahiri, who's with me doing PhD, we used AI to find out who they were. And AI using ChatGPT was unsuccessful. By the way, it identified every single other person in that image, because that image includes a lot of prompts. You can see lots of equations there, etc., and it was 72% successful in identifying these people, except for these two gentlemen. So we used Google Lens, and it came out with these two people. So the top one, who I said looked oriental, but it's not, is Wilhelm Wundt, and he was the first so-called experimental psychologist, and he was looking at touch sensitivity amongst patients with hysteria. So we've got psychology coming into this now. And then below him, we've got Dalton, John Dalton, who, apart from looking at partial pressures in gaseous systems, also looked at the combination of atoms into molecules. So I was asking myself, how many of these people would we have identified as medical physicists, and none of them, because this was predating the era of what we call medical physics. But on the right-hand side is the entry by my own PhD student, Ali Tahiri. So what he tried to do was to show what is developing in medical physics right now. And on the top two pictures, the top three pictures, we have young people, we have people in lectures, and we have people in seminars. So the value of education, which has been stressed by the previous two speakers. And then on the left-hand side, we have diagnosis, and what we have there is the picture of a PET CT machine. And in the picture below it, we see an image from PET on the left-hand side, which is showing the physiological aspects of the body, not the anatomical aspects, whereas the CT in the middle is giving you the anatomical features. So the combination of the two is given on the right-hand side and shows the PET CT combined image. And then on the bottom side, we have something that looks like chemistry. And in fact, what it is that we're beginning to look at the combination in nuclear medicine of theranostics, therapy and diagnostic aspects of nuclear medicine. Whereas on the right-hand side there, we have the treatments. So the theranostics could also go into treatments. But you can see here a very advanced machine in radiotherapy, a megavoltage machine, which can actually paint dose with incredible degrees of freedom, applying incredible power of software and computing to be able to control where dose is painted on the body. And then in the one below it, you can see that there is this picture of the segmentation of fields to try to avoid organs at risk. And a particular example of trying to avoid organs at risk is in the treatment of nasopharyngeal carcinoma, which has a relatively high incidence in Southeast Asia, but has a very low incidence in the West. So we have a great deal of knowledge here in this area of the world on the treatment of nasopharyngeal carcinoma. And then below it we have nanoparticle treatment. So we have a gold particle here, and we try to tag this to a molecule that will be recognized by cancerous growth and will be delivered hopefully to that particular cancerous growth to provide treatment exactly where the tumor exists. So this is gold at atomic number 79, and I refer you back now to the gold ring of Madame Röntgen on calcium of atomic number 20, and so the bone is a calcified system with an atomic number of 20, effective atomic number when you add in all the other elements in bones, so hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, you come out with an effective atomic number of the skeletal system of 13, and the gold with atomic number 79, or you can use platinum with atomic number 78. And in the bottom of that diagram, you can see that our need to understand wave theory on the left-hand side, and of course on the right-hand side you can see the physiological PQRS output of ECGs. So you can see from this particular poster that this is the areas, are not the only areas, but these are some of the areas in which we can make an impact in trying to innovate. And these all are relatively recent innovations that I'm showing you here. The one thing that we've not shown here, of course, is ultrasound. And I should mention that in ultrasound nowadays, although people understand it to be used in diagnostically greatly in looking at the development of the fetus, for instance, it can also be used in a therapeutic regime through something called HIFU, which is high intensity focused ultrasound. And that sounds easy, high intensity focused ultrasound, until you come to the idea of focusing. Because if your focusing is poor, you will not be hitting the area that you wish to treat, but be hitting uninvolved tissue and damaging that tissue. So there's a great deal of need shown in both of these posters in trying to develop new solutions to problems that have existed since man first appeared on the Earth's surface. So we'll go to the next slide. And talking about the control of the elements, we go from the major elements, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and then also calcium, which accounts for a large part of our body weight. So we're going from kilograms here to the minor elements, and you have an understanding now that you need iron, and there's only 6 grams of iron in the whole body, but without that iron you would be dead. And then we go to the trace elements, which are only in microgram amounts, and you can look at copper, you can look at other essential elements that are used in enzymatic processes, and again, you would be dead without those microgram levels in the body. So what we do need, apart from medical physics and the fundamental physics that underpins it, is a knowledge of anatomy and physiology. So in trying to combine your efforts together with the medical profession, you really need to be able to develop your knowledge of anatomy and physiology. And I just give one example here, potassium 40. Potassium is an essential element of the body. In potassium, one in every of the 8,500 atoms, you'll find one radioactive potassium 40 element. And in a 70 kilogram individual, which is the sort of standard mass for a male, there's around about 5 kilobecquerels of activity in the human body, emitting 1,460 kV gammas at a particular rate. And why are we interested in that? Because potassium is a predominant intracellular element. It's in the skeletal system, in muscles, in organs, in the liver, for instance. And each of these contain a large share of the total potassium in the body. And without this potassium being in the body in balance with the rest of the body, which we call homeostasis, then there was going to be ill health, and therefore low-level whole body counters are being used in detecting this potassium 40, which you might say was, oh, this is dangerous for the body, but actually is being used here in a very great way to study lean body mass and the problem of muscular wasting. So let's move on to the next slide. And we look at quickly at the birth of medical applications, and we come to the X-ray martyrs. And actually, this picture on the left-hand side, which was purportedly in the 2023 posted to be that of Röntgen, is in fact Eugene Wilson Caldwell, who was developing fluoroscopy. And you'll see from this that A, that there's no shielding around the tube, and B, he's looking directly through his hand into the tube. And therefore you can see below, in this particular area where nobody knew that X-rays were damaging, that you can see chronic dermatitis being developed in such people. And then you can see that within a few years, the cancer develops, as you can see. So this is sort of taking a few years to rise. And then after that, from the cancer, death occurring. And this is a particular picture of a hand belonging to an X-ray operator. And in fact, Clarence Daly, who worked with Thomas Edison, who developed the light bulb, so it doesn't look too different from a X-ray tube, was testing every single X-ray tube that was made by Edison by putting his hand into the beam. And so when we now acknowledge that Röntgen was accorded the discovery of the X-ray in the 8th of November 1895, it's surprising to find that the first X-ray machine in Southeast Asia was in Taiping Hospital on the 3rd of February 1897. And so after that, in 1970, Kuala Lumpur General Hospital received its first X-ray machine, and Penang General Hospital received its first X-ray machine in the same year. We can go to the next slide. So damage to the body is extremely important, and we've heard Chai Hong talking about health physics. And one of these is in trying to measure the skin dose, which we've just seen has been rather horrifying in its effects. So by 1928, there were the first controls of the use of radiation. And actually the first use of therapeutic radiation took many years to develop. It was around about 1920 or so. But the first measurement of radiation dose was by measuring how red your skin became. And it was called the skin erythema dose. And of course, that is not at all a very great way of measuring skin dose. So we go to the next slide. And we come to people trying to measure skin dose now in a more scientific way, as we try to innovate and produce developments. And ICRP 59 and ICRU 39 reports recommend that we assess dose at 0.07 millimeters, 70 microns, depth below the dead skin layer. And that 70 microns is where the skin cells are regenerated, so they are susceptible to radiation damage. So what kind of dosimeter can we use to measure this dose at this depth? So we need to also appreciate the complexities in measurement of a surface. So if you're trying to measure not only skin dose but eye dose, you're confronted by a very, very complex surface. So these are all requiring us to innovate in ways that you may not originally want to where you may not initially understand. So we'll go to the next slide. And apart from using graphite layers, you could use something like a solid-state nuclear track detector. The problem with this solid-state nuclear track detector that I'm showing here is that it's only about 13 microns thick. And of course, it only is sensitive to high LET radiations like alpha particles and protons. So I want to show this because this was developed by me, and not the idea of SSNTDs, but this particular image was done by me at the School of Physics in USM in 1987. And by 1995, we had the first program in medical physics developed at USM, and I was a part of that process. So we can't generally use solid-state nuclear track detectors for looking at X-ray damage, because you don't get this kind of damage recorded in these materials. So we needed something else. So we looked at using graphite layers. And we go to the next slide, if you will, please. And you can see that if you have thin layers of graphite, and I'm talking by thin here, about 50 microns thick, and we can see that if we irradiate it in a mammographic exposure, and I have to thank Jenny, who's also on the line, for providing us with these exposures and helping us to work with it. And you can see that we've been able to record doses from 2.8 to 15 or so milligray, which is the range that we can see mammography operating in. And we're able to measure the depth dose. So even 10 layers of this graphite gives you just half a millimeter. So it's an area where we could, as in the use of the solid-state nuclear track detector, where with very little money, we can innovate. These things are not costly. We're talking about tens of ringgit for these layers of graphite. So it is not that we need to be involved in the development of the machines, which is very, very expensive and needs you to work with people like Electra and Siemens and so on. But in the hospital, there are these very high capital intensive X-ray machines and so on. And if we have the right type of questioning approach, we can try to innovate and find ways to contribute to medical physics. If we go to the next slide. And we can use also PTFE. So I just want to talk about X-ray phase propagation, because it is said that Rosalind Franklin had a role to play in the development of medical physics, and here it is, because what she was doing, crystallography, you're only using the elastic scattering component of the X-ray beam. You're not using the inelastic part. And it's the inelastic part in this bottom right-hand picture that gave Röntgen his first image of his wife's hand. So there you have this calcium hand, so the atomic number 13, effective atomic number 13, against this gold ring of atomic number 79, and you had this tremendous contrast between the two. But if you actually go and not use the inelastic component, but try to make use of the elastic component, then you can see that with the microfocus X-ray tube, our sample was a bee in this case, or a wasp, and our detector, area sensitive detector, that we're able to look at the very fine features of this wasp. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can even see that these probosces, these two whiskers at the front there, also have structure, and you can tell whether this wasp is male or female from the structure of that proboscis. But we're not interested in entomology. We're interested in human beings at this point. And so there are attempts, and there have been attempts, to try to use phase contrast mammography, as you can see in these also two pictures there of a breast with a lot of features within it. But of course, this is an extremely difficult area, because if you have a microfocus X-ray source, you're hitting electrons onto a very small spot, and quickly the microfocus X-ray source becomes damaged, and so it only has tens to a few, maximum of 100 hours or so of lifetime before you have to change the tube. And also it's very slow. So images of a person that is moving and breathing is very, very difficult. But this is an area of innovation that I like to point out to you, that all it requires is an optical bench, a microfocus X-ray tube, a detector, and a suitable sample to be able to make some progress in this area. And University College London, for instance, is very famous for its work on X-ray phase propagation, as well as a group in Germany is working on this. So next slide. Continuing on the issue of phase contrast imaging, because you can see lots of us hobbling around, people my age, hobbling around with damage to the articular joints, and the articular cartilage has been damaged, in my case, in my knee. And the interesting thing about our cartilage is that it does not regenerate. All that happens is you have wear and tear damage. It creates damage to the surface of the cartilage, and interestingly also, all of the nourishment of the cartilage to keep it viable is coming from the underlying bone. And underlying bone is not dead, it is live, and you can see here the microvasculature down to 8 microns of these blood vessels keeping the bone alive. But if you take away so the interesting thing is that the human being is very bad at looking at very small differences in contrast. But if you use phase contrast imaging, so you might say that I can't see any difference between above that yellow band and below the yellow band. But if I take the yellow band away, as in the next slide, if you move to the next slide, there you are. You can see the articular cartilage. Okay, not one back, please. You can go back one, please. So you can see the articular cartilage there is actually nice and smooth. This is not a human being, and it was not due to us sacrificing an animal. It was an animal that had met the end of its life. And in fact, it has a very nice, smooth articular cartilage. But you can also see that there's no blood supply in there. So it is proven that the nourishment of this cartilage is coming from the underlying bone and the blood vessels that supply that. Okay, so again, there are real good uses of phase contrast imaging. It just needs to be explored in greater detail. So let's move on. Coming back to people who actually then work with industry. So here is one of my ex-PhD students. This is Shaka Jafari in the UK, and she was working with me on optical fibers for dosimetry using TLD. She looked at the beads that are sewn onto the dresses of women. They're only 1 millimeter in size in this particular case. And she said, well, these optical fibers and these beads are doing the same thing. And now she has a thing called a dose mapper, and she has her own company in the UK that's called True In Vivo. And it is developing quite rapidly. And you can Google it if you wish to see how well she's doing. But I know a packet of 100 of these beads may cost you 2 or 3 ringgit. Again, you see, you can make big ventures into innovating in radiotherapy to try and provide you with doses at very fine spatial resolution. And of course, this actually can also be used in vivo. So, for instance, in being introduced through the ureter, in being able to measure the dose of the prostate at the point of the prostate. The prostate can move on a day-to-day basis up to around about 2 centimeters. So a skin mark on the outside surface may not actually indicate an infractionation where the prostate is on the next day and so on. Anyway, let's move on to the next slide. I'm coming to the end, everybody, if you will. The next slide. Let me go on to the next. Okay. So this is me using PTFE tape and photoluminescence and irradiating it to an americium-241 source. Where do you get an americium-241 source from? Well, smoke detectors have got very small amounts of radioactivity in them, and this is an americium-241 source at the University of Malaya, as it turns out. And we use this PTFE, which you can buy for around about 50 cents in any hardware shop in Malaysia, and you get 12 meters of it for 50 cents, and it is 75 microns thick, and it has a standard attached to it, so you know that it's actually 75 microns thick. So you could use this in looking at skin dose, and what we were doing here was irradiating this PTFE with different exposure times, and if you use Monte Carlo analysis, as Kwong Ho Lee did in the journal Applied Radiation Isotopes, this was equivalent, as they could show, of doses for this particular activity from 0.3 to 4 milligray. So again, in the sort of area where you might be interested in diagnostic doses. Diagnostic dose for chest radiograph will typically be less than 0.1 milligray. So the left-hand side shows that we have the right-hand side shows the dose you get when you just expose the source to the PTFE. And if you put a piece of paper between the two, because americium produces alpha particles as well as X-rays. So if you put in the piece of paper between the beam and the PTFE, then you block out the alphas and you're just left with the X-rays. So the left-hand side is showing you the response from the X-rays, and the right-hand side, the response from the X-rays and the alpha particles together. And I asked the question down below, is there a potential for treatment of mycosis fungoides, which is a cancer and is very difficult to treat, and is a fungal-like growth on the skin surface. It's something that we have yet to try to work through in detail. Next slide. I think we're at the end. Okay, so I think I've probably taken up too much time, I think. So let us go through this very quickly. This is just using optical fibers to try to measure lifetime doses. This is something that both the University of Malaya group and my group, together with Multimedia University, where Multimedia University has an optical fiber group. So we're using radioluminescence. We'll go on to the next slide. And using radioluminescence, so this is now something that's just light. There's no electricity involved at the sensor end. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a fiber optic scintillator. We're trying to measure the inside at the point of the linac, carrying the light back to a photodetector, and being able to measure the output of light produced at the scintillator. So no electricity at the left-hand side, all right? Unlike a ion chamber, which you cannot put in contact with the patient's skin. Go to the next slide. And you'll know that a linear accelerator produces radiation in pulses. Each pulse is about 3 to 5 microseconds. Go to the next slide. And here you can see our radioluminescence response, looking at increasing the dose rate on the left-hand side and increasing the fixed dose rate on the right-hand side. Go to the next slide, please. And you can see the effect of the radioluminescence on the left-hand side axis against the dose rate for both electrons and photons. So again, this has been a very successful collaboration between myself and the MMU group. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, but you can also use it in diagnostic imaging. So we've done this on a extremities X-ray machine, low energy. Go to the next slide. It delivers pulses, single pulses, so exactly the same system as we've used before in LINAC for phosphorus-doped silica optical fiber, which we made ourselves. Go on to the next slide, please. And there you can see the rise and return to baseline as characteristics of a single 1 millisecond pulse from a 120 kVb X-ray tube. So it is innovation. That is an area where we can actually make use of what we have and look to capitalize on it. We go to the next line. Okay, and here you can see the individual pulses from using from a LINAC, and go on to the next slide. What I wanted to show, because you may have missed it, but on my very first slide, you saw this wonderful blue color, and it is Cherenkov radiation, that blue color, which is only generated when the machine is on. So when you use a phosphorus, any doped silica optical fiber, then the top in black, you will see the fluorescence and phosphorescence. There's a phosphorescent afterglow that is causing us problems, but you do not get that with the Cherenkov radiation. So you could do timing with the Cherenkov radiation. Go on to the next slide. Okay, and as you increase the dose rate, you can see that this phosphorescent problem starts to increase, because you then see that you haven't got time in that bottom right-hand slide for the output to return to baseline before the next pulse starts. But you can see that there are issues where we could use this. So this was an interesting one with Dr. Ung, UNG, looking at variable dose rates. He's doing the same session. And the black is using, on a phantom, using an ion chamber. And the right-hand side is us showing our optical fiber. As I said, you can't put the ion chamber onto the patient's skin, but you see we have very good mapping of the radioluminescence against the ion chamber dose rate. So there is a possibility of very good utilization of the optical fiber, but there are still some issues. You can see it in that very last termination there, that the radioluminescence at the very end, for some reason, has not particularly well mapped the ion chamber output. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so what am I saying? You need to get involved. There needs to be ways in which you get involved right from the very beginning. So I got involved in something called the International Radiation Physics Society from 1982 in Penang at the conference called the Second International Symposium on Radiation Physics. There have been many since then across the world. If you want to be amused, this is me on the right, at the bottom right-hand side, when I was at the meeting in Sao Paulo in 1988. Yeah, and you can see also Professor Abdulaziz Tajuddin just standing next to me on the left-hand side. Yeah, and since then we've produced special issues of every single conference that we've organized since then. So this was the first one in Calcutta. I wasn't there because that was in 1974. And it was produced as a National Bureau of Standards special issue. We'll go to the next slide. By the way, the first president of the International Radiation Physics Society was P.K. Iyengar, who became the president of Atomic Energy in India. And he's sitting at the bottom side there on the top picture. And I became the 11th president of the society. And the 12th one is the first female president of our society. So we begin to break a one glass ceiling. Okay, get to the next slide. These are some of the special issues that we produced ever since then. You need to develop your acumen in handling language in order to get these special issues produced. We'll go to the next slide. And I think is my last one. So what is the future? So can we go from using, for instance, something like optical fiber sensor to something that's on your wrist with a dose on it? Could we use it in a smartphone to be able to link up with people across the world? It's all going to depend on people who are exactly like you, the audience. And I just ask you the question, do you have the curiosity? Do you have the passion, the desire, the commitment, the integrity. Go to Rosalind Franklin. She was robbed of a Nobel Prize. You can see also Lisa Meitner, again in fission process, robbed of the Nobel Prize. So there's a lack of integrity there, and the ability to rebound from numerous setbacks that all of us practicing people are very, very familiar with. So thank you very much for listening to me.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. David, for this insight. You're going to talk about innovation in the area of medical physics, involving different novel materials, for example, graphite, and also the use of transducers such as optical fiber to advancing the area of medical physics. So before our Q&A and also coffee break sessions, let's just have a photo together. You may open up your cameras. For all the participants, you may open up your cameras so that we can take photo together.
So we'll switch on him.
So all the audience, please turn on your camera so that we can take photo together. Everyone.
Done.
Audience. Audience.
Yeah.
Right. Our audience, you would like to open up your cameras. Yeah. So we have team and you can have you. Please play it. All right, ready everyone? 1, 2, and 3, smile. One more time, maybe freestyle. All right, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. So, we're going to move into the Q&A session for all our speakers. You may unmute your mic and also introduce yourself and address the question to the speakers. So it can be from our first session, second session, or third session speakers. So have any question, please? Any question from the floor? So basically, we have one question in the chat box in our Webex. So the question from Danny. I think this is addressed to Prof. David Bradley. And then the question is, how do Prof think that the organic radioisotope-based medicine will be a part of medicine in future, such as combine the aspirin using substitution of radioisotope in it? Maybe Prof. David Bradley.
Yeah, thank you very much. I actually don't know anything about the use of this in modifying aspirin,
All right.
but of course, what we do know is that the body is composed mainly of light elements, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. So it's extremely important to be able to be looking to map um, uh, these elements within the human body. You can see that we've been partially successful when you get to, for instance, potassium is atomic number 19. You can map that. You easily can map the skeletal system. But what you can't do is you can't map at the moment in any conventional way uh, the the minor elements. You can map the iron by using contrast agents, so you know where the iron is, where the blood supply is. But if you try to map trace elements, then it's not to work at the moment. But I'm sorry, I don't know about how organic radioisotopes are. Which isotope would you be thinking of? Would you be thinking of tritium, which has an energy of only 12.3 keV? In which case you can only look at very thin objects. Yeah.
Then it's Bill. Then it's Bill. If they want to ask questions, keep sharing it. Maybe he's not. Oh, all right. Halogen.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. I mean, you could look at xenon, argon, krypton, and in fact, krypton is being used in looking at lung volume. So you're breathing in radioactive krypton 133. That has been shown to be possible. But how you would use it in being able to incorporate into body parts other than the lung, so and delivering that. How would you deliver the halogen into the human is a good question. I don't know the answer to.
All right. I still have maybe for one question. Any from the audience?
This does sound like somebody's PhD thesis, by the way. Yeah.
All right. By the way, the chat box will be always open. If audience have any question, you can just type in the chat box, and probably we're going to address after the coffee break session. So thank you very much for the speakers for this session. So we're going